glad to handle them? He's not laughing. How come you're not laughing, Bill? Okay. So I have about half an hour, and what I want to do is just let you know what's going on in the FBI. I wish nobody knows what's going on in the FBI. In the NYPD. And then save 5 or 10 minutes for questions. So we had our end of the month crime briefing a couple of weeks ago, and we were up 8 homicides. And we're down in shootings, up in rapes, down in overall crime 1.8%, and people were writing about how it's trending the other way now. And our contention was that the numbers are so small that there's going to be fluctuations in the numbers. So as of this morning, we're down 4 homicides year to date, and last year was the best year we've had in New York City since 1951. There were 292 homicides. You know, you contrast that to 1990 when there were 2,245 homicides. So keeping the city safe, protecting the city is what we think about all the time. Of course, most of my time is spent on traditional crime, but a lot of my time is spent on counterterrorism too. So I just want to talk a little bit about what we're doing about traditional crime. I'll talk about what we're doing on the counterterrorism front, and then hopefully we'll have enough time for some questions. We've changed the way we're doing business in the NYPD over the last 4 years. I've been a cop, as Paul said, for 35 and a half years now. Although, actually, as the police commissioner, I'm a civilian, so I stopped being a cop about 2 years ago. But that's okay. In my mind, I'm still a cop. And in that 35 and a half years, I've had plenty of opportunities to lead. And the most important jobs I've had over those years were being a precinct commander, because that's where it all starts, at the local level. There's 77 precincts in the city. There's transit districts and there's transit PSAs, housing PSAs. But precincts are where you really learn to develop your skills as a leader internally, but also externally. I had the Central Park precinct. Believe it or not, there's a full-blown precinct there. When I was there, there's 130 cops to take care of that beautiful 843 acres. Crime has not been a big thing in Central Park for many, many years. Now we're at an all-time low in crimes in Central Park. But after that, I actually went to a precinct where people lived. I did a good job in Central Park. They sent me to East Harlem. Somebody chuckled. Thank you very much. That's good. Thank you. I went to the 2-5, which is in East Harlem. It's 115th Street to 149th Street from 5th Avenue to the river. Not the busiest precinct in the city, but a place that does have challenges with violence. So I was there for 2 years. I was there during 9/11. There were 6 or 7 spots in the precinct that were prone to violence. Probably it's less than that now, but I can still remember them. That's how I think as a precinct commander you really get connected to crime. And we have every Thursday morning we have the CompStat meeting, and if you don't know about CompStat, and if you ever have the opportunity to go, it would definitely be worthwhile. It's a system of accountability, where if your precinct is up in crime, if your borough is up in crime, and the city's broken into 8 patrol boroughs because some of the boroughs are too big for one chief to handle, you get to come down on Thursday morning, and you not only get to explain why your crime is up, but most importantly, what's your plan to bring crime back down? So that is the connection to crime, and I've been going to CompStat since 1996. I first started going there when I was a lieutenant in the warrant squad. And I think this is why you see a number of reasons, but I think this is one of the main reasons why you saw such a drastic change in crime in New York City. It's a great system of accountability. It's a great system of building leadership. And it's a great system to keep the city safe. And we're down to, our homicide rate is 3.4 per 100,000. If we're up 8 or if we're down 4, it's still about 3.4 per 100,000. And if you look at other large cities, Chicago's about 17 last time I checked per 100,000. Milwaukee, St. Louis, they're about 30 per 100,000. So, in our heyday, in the 90s, the homicide rate was 30 per 100,000. In our shootings, and that's when it's not police officer involved shootings, it's a shooting. Back in 1990, there were 5,000 shootings, and last year we had 790. And in our heyday, shootings were about 60 per 100,000. We're now about 9 per 100,000. And those are numbers, but those are people. And if you do the math, from 1990 to 2018, if that homicide rate continued, if there were still 2,245 people getting murdered every year, do the math. What's that, 50,000 people would have been murdered in New York City? And what about the other end of that? The people that committed those murders. They'd be in jail, they'd be in prison. So a lot of good work has been done by the men and women of the NYPD. But it's not work that we do alone, and it's not work that we can do alone. I'm able to make a joke about Bill and the FBI because we have a good relationship. I'm not sure if that joke would have went over 3 or 4 years ago, quite frankly. No. So it's important to have relationships and build upon relationships. Today's July 17th. This is the 4-year anniversary of the death of Eric Garner. And I think that, in conjunction with my experience as a precinct commander, is really what pushed me into neighborhood policing. I don't know if you know anything about precinct operations, but I'm going to give you the 2-minute version here. Prior to neighborhood policing, if you had a precinct like the 4-4, you had 300 cops, 150 cops would be answering 911 jobs. The other 150 cops would be doing traffic enforcement, quality of life work, anti-crime work, low-level drug work, administrative work. Nowhere in that model of policing is anyone have any connection in the community. The only people doing that work are the precinct commander and the 2, and if you're lucky, 3 or 4 community affairs cops you have. And it's important to have those connections on that level, but the connections have to be at the people actually doing the work, the people answering 911 jobs, the people answering, getting flagged down. That's where the connection has to be. And that's what neighborhood policing is. We put the same cops in the same sectors every day. Doesn't seem like rocket science, but to do it right takes a great effort. Because you can't just wave a magic wand and all of a sudden your cops are community-minded people. It takes a tremendous amount of training, it takes motivation. You have to have the right leadership in the precincts. That is the key position in this police department. You have to have people that believe. And if they believe, the transition will happen. You have to make sure you pick the right neighborhood coordination officers. There's two per precinct, two per sector. And each sector has 4 or 5 sectors. And those sectors represent natural neighborhoods. The feedback we're getting from the police officers, extremely positive. They have ownership now. Prior to that, I might be working in Sector Eddy today, and I'm working in Sector Union tomorrow, and guess what? If I don't take care of the problem in Eddy, I'm not working there tomorrow, so where's the ownership? So now there's ownership. Now there's accountability down to the precinct, down to the sector level, down to the police officer level. There's still supervision. And there's sergeants, lieutenants, there's the precinct commander, and that's important. But it's also important for the police officers to know that we trust them. To build trust with the community, we have to trust our cops. And we do, and that's part of this model. And they use discretion. With those crime numbers going down, our enforcement numbers are down. Arrests are down, criminal court summonses are down. 250s, which is stop and question, at its height in 2011 was 600,000. Last year we had, I think, 12,000. If you're gonna conduct enforcement, and it's necessary, there are still people in this world that don't want to do good, that are evil. You have to acknowledge that. Enforcement's necessary, but it should be directed at the people involved in the violence and the crime. So our enforcement numbers are still going down. The only enforcement numbers that are going up are traffic enforcement. And I think there's a direct correlation there. The more enforcement that you do, the more lives that you can save. Our Vision Zero numbers were down 21 traffic deaths as of this morning compared to last year, and last year was a record year. So this is a major change. It's a major change in the way we do business. We changed the detective bureau. It's a unified model now. The narcotics people, the vice people, they all work for the chief of detectives now. The gang people, they all work for Dermot Shea. Bob Boyce just retired a couple months ago. And what's important there is their mission is the same. Their mission is the same as the people on patrol. And it wasn't always the case. And it's not bad intentions. People want to do well. People are ambitious. But sometimes the missions didn't coincide, and now they do. And we just had a hearing with the city council about the gang database, the criminal group database. And look what happened up in the Bronx, to Junior Guzman Feliz. He was killed by the Trinitarios. But having that gang, that criminal group database, it's important, not only in that case, but if we're going to continue to reduce violence, it has to be used. People come in and come out. There's 17,000 people in that. We cleaned that up back in 2014. There were over 30,000. Now, once you're in, doesn't mean you stay in forever. And to be put into that gang database, you have to self-admit, and it takes a detective with a supervisor to put you in there. And it's important work. And I think after the hearing at the city council, I think they understood how important that is, and especially post Junior Guzman Feliz. And if you haven't seen that video, you should see that video. Then you might think differently about what the NYPD is doing with gangs. I've been a cop, as I said, almost 36 years. I think it's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen. And I've seen some pretty difficult things. So never think that the NYPD doesn't understand what their mission is. That's to keep the people of the city safe. And we do our best each and every day. Not perfect, it's never going to be perfect. You know, at diversity, we're a majority-minority police department, which is important to continue to build trust. We have to have a police department that reflects the diversity of the city. As you go on up the ranks, it's getting better and better each year. And as I choose executives to be precinct commanders or district or PSA commanders or division or bureau commanders, diversity plays a big part in that decision, and it's important. People need role models as they come up through the ranks. And it's a big police department. It's 36,000 cops. It was 34,000 cops a couple of years ago, but the city council and the mayor increased our head count by about 2,000, and we have 18,000 civilians. So it's a 54,000 person police department that does their best to keep you safe. And again, not by ourselves. Bill's people in the FBI, they don't just help us with counterterrorism. It's local violence too. Randolph Holder was murdered back in October of 2015. Bill in the Southern District came to us and wanted to do a case at East River Houses. And they did it. That's, when you talk about local impact, that made a difference not only to the people in PSA 5, but the people that live in East River Houses, which is the most important thing. So we're not operating in a vacuum. The DEA helps us. We have the DETF, Drug Enforcement Task Force. Now in 2000, we don't have the final numbers of 2017, but it looks like it's probably going to be 1,600 people died of opioid overdoses in 2017. That's 5 or 6 times the murder rate. That's 5 or 6 times the rate of people killed in traffic accidents. Again, that's not a problem that the NYPD can do. We can't handle that by ourselves. We do that with the city. We do that with the DETF. And we gotta make it. We had a lot of questions about drug overdose prevention sites. And as I said, I mean, I'm law enforcement through and through. So I took the job to make a difference, to do good. But when that was first proposed to me, I said, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could say that's okay. Then somebody said, what if that's your son? Do you want them ODing in a bathroom in a fast food restaurant, in an alley? Or do you want them to have a chance? Well, you have to have an open mind. It's 2018. And I don't know if it's going to happen here. There are 4 proposed sites. My answer to them was, this is, of course I'll consider this. Anything that we can do to save lives, I'll consider. Took a little bit of heat for it, but not too much, and that's okay. Heat comes with this job. I think, as a matter of fact, There was an article in the paper today about me using a plane to go out to a wake to pay respects to Chief Boyce's mother. That's part of the job. We take the heat. It's okay. I'm a big boy, been a cop for a long time. So just, I want to talk about counterterrorism. And make no mistake about it, there's been 3 terrorist attacks in New York City over the last 22 months. My first day on the job, September 17th, 2016, the Chelsea bombing. Got to the scene, Bill was there, ATF was there, the fire department was there. When I first heard about it, I was driving in my car, and I said, this is my first day on the job, this is what happens. It's gonna be a fun run. But I took a breath, and I thought about the people at work and law enforcement in this city, and I said, this is gonna be resolved quickly. I got to the scene, the FBI bomb techs were working hand in hand with our bomb squad. No issues of jurisdiction. Nobody talked about that. Let's get the job done. Let's process the scene. Let's get that evidence down to Quantico. We had somebody identified in 35 hours, and we had somebody under arrest in 50 hours out in Linden, New Jersey. And major reason why that happened was because of technology. We were able to put that name out there. And somebody in Linden saw that guy, made a phone call, and the Linden police, actually, you probably know this, they got into a shootout. But they did end up apprehending him. And the Southern District did a fine job prosecuting him. Then we had the West Side truck attack on Halloween last year. He's from Jersey, rented a truck from Home Depot. 45 minutes later, he's killing people on the West Side. Again, the response was immediate. But it takes all 8.6 million New Yorkers and everybody in this metropolitan area to pay attention to what's going on. And if you see something that doesn't look right, it's not that you should, I think you must. You must make a phone call, flag down a cop, give people the opportunity to investigate. Every threat that comes over that threat stream is investigated either by the Joint Terrorist Task Force or by the NYPD Intelligence Bureau. And we have to do it. And we have to bat 1,000. We can't miss. If we miss, people get hurt, people die. And there was the subway suicide bomber last December. It was lucky for us that that bomb wasn't built correctly. Everybody in New York City, I'm sure, probably knows that passageway. It's on 42nd Street between 4-2 and 8 and Times Square. You probably walk down it. See how confined that is. And again, technology helped us with that. We had him on video coming from Brooklyn, almost every step of the way. We had the same thing with Rahimi, the Chelsea bomber. So it's important that we have that ability to investigate. We have the ability to prevent. You see the critical response command vehicles all around the city. They're specially trained, highly trained anti-terrorism cops. We used to send a car from every precinct into Manhattan to cover high visibility posts, sensitive locations. But now we created one command, the Critical Response Command. It's hundreds of police officers, and this is what they do each and every day. And we also have the Strategic Response Group. And God forbid there's an active shooter, they're able to respond too. And they have access to long guns, rifles. Now who would think, 6, 7 years ago that we'd have to have more people with rifles in New York City. And when this started, Thanksgiving. I used to have 3 favorite days of the year. I say this all the time. Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve, and 4th of July. I can't wait for them to be over. Can't. We just went through 4th of July. Millions of people on each side of the river. The FBI is out there. We're out there doing our best to keep the city safe. Everybody's paying attention. And we got through it okay. And this past New Year's Eve, this was on the heels of Las Vegas. So now not only do we have to worry about the subway, we don't have to worry about ground level, then we have to worry about up above. And how do you do that? And again, we did it. We did it with the help of other agencies. We have terrific resources in the NYPD, but we reached out and people didn't hesitate. They came. We had observation teams, counter-sniper teams. And I think it was 4 degrees, so there really wasn't that many people. somebody was looking out for us. It was a terribly cold day. But every event now, we have to make sure that we have that same package. And John Miller talks about that all the time. So a lot of good work being done internally, a lot of good work being done by our law enforcement partners. It's great work being done by the prosecutors. Ed McMahon, not Ed, Mike McMahon. Ed McMahon's another guy. Mike McMahon out in Staten Island. Eric is in Brooklyn. Darcel is in the Bronx, Cy, and Judge Brown out in Queens. And that's important work. And the Southern and the Eastern District too. Sometimes we have the opportunity to take people federally, and that does provide incentive to cooperate. So it's important work that's being done. I'm done, no. So it's important work that gets done here every day, and again, not alone. So at that point, I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to take some questions, and I'll answer them as best I can. And again, if they're really hard, Bill's going to help me out. So. All right, so are subway delays and poor service a public safety issue? You know what, I guess I'm going to try to answer this seriously. I guess it could be, right? If you're, the more you have to wait for subway trains, the more people are down on the platforms waiting, so I guess it could be a public safety issue. The second part of that question is, have you seen an uptick in related crimes? Actually, crime down in the subway is down this year. I think it's down, last time I checked, about 6%. I'd have to get a hard number for you. So there's about 6 felony crimes a day in the subway. And there's between 5 and 6 million people a day that ride the subway. So the subway is a pretty safe place to be. And I started out as a transit cop back in 1983, and the subways were far different back then, in the 80s and the 90s. So there's been a big turnaround in safety in the subways. So why won't the NYPD allow the Manhattan DA to have direct access to NYPD disciplinary records and investigative reports? That's something we're working with Cy Vance on right now. I'm not sure if he needs total access to our disciplinary records. It's important in some cases, but we're working with Cy, and we've been working with his office for a while. We have a very good working relationship with the District Attorney of New York. And we do have difference of opinions, not just on this. We differ on theft of service enforcement. We differ on marijuana enforcement, but that's the beauty of working with different people. After a while, we'll figure out what's the right way to go and what's the right thing to do, and we usually get there. What initiatives are in place in New York City to protect schools from threats such as gun violence? I mean, we all saw what happened down at Parkland. We have 1,800 schools in New York City, 1,400 buildings. We have 5,300 school safety agents and about 100, last time I checked, about 140 uniform NYPD people assigned to the school safety task force. But we also have the NCOs are involved in schools. We have drills in every school. And we also have the Intelligence Bureau. Whatever threats come in, and there are a number of threats that come into the DOE, and into the police department, and each and every one of those are investigated, and there have been arrests made. So school safety is a priority for the NYPD. Why are homeless people being arrested and treated and not treated for mental illness? So we have all of our police officers, not all of them, I think the number's up to about 7,000 of our patrol officers now, have gone through crisis intervention training. We're not in the business to arrest homeless people. We're in the business, we actually have a homeless outreach outreach unit. It's about 100 people. And they go throughout the city, work in conjunction with the mayor's people from DHS and offer services and try to get people into shelters. So it's, and we're not looking to lock up homeless people. If there's a condition that needs to be corrected, it needs to be corrected. If there's a violation that happens, we have to address it. So that's, again, going back to my precinct commander experience. I did it for a little over 6 years. If I didn't pay attention to quality of life issues, at every meeting that I went to, whether it's a community council meeting, a tenant association meeting, a business meeting, people spoke about quality of life. It's something that has to be addressed. And if you don't do it, you're not going to be a precinct commander very long. So you mentioned rape has increased in New York City, and I assume reports of sexual assault have increased too. What is the NYPD strategy to combat domestic and gender-based violence? So if you've been reading the papers or watching the news over the last few months, you know that rape is up considerably, but we're looking for increased reporting. We had DOI came out with a report about the Special Victims Division, about the need to assign more investigators. We're working with DOI to figure out those exact numbers, what they should be. And we're also with the new chief of detectives, Dermot Shea. He's doing a top-to-bottom review of special victims to make sure that we have the right number of people in there. To be assigned to special victims takes a extraordinary human being. It's tough work, and we have to make sure that we select the right people and put the right people in there, and make sure that we are doing our best for the survivors of sexual assault. And we do meet periodically with the advocates to make sure that we are not doing things unilaterally, that we're doing the right thing. Got a couple more here. You said as the commissioner, I'm not reading ahead either on this one, so I don't know what's following. You said as commissioner, it is your job to take the heat, considering historical trends for crime during climate stresses. What is your short-term, long-term strategy to deal with the heat? So again, going back to my experience, and I was in patrol, I was in the narcotics division, I was in vice, I was in I was in transit, so I have a pretty broad background. And in the summer, the numbers do go up. But we have to make sure we do what we can to address that violence. And this year we sent out about 300 people that are assigned to administrative positions. It's called Summer All Out, and put them in the top 9 precincts where there's violence. And we just graduated a class of 750 recruits, and they were assigned to all the transit districts, PSAs, and then precincts too. So there are additional uniforms out on the street. And with neighborhood policing, one thing I did forget to say is that all those specialized units within the precinct, we put them back on patrol. So now instead of turning out 5 cars, you're turning out a dozen cars. You're turning out 15 cars. So increased visibility, and that's important. It's important during the summer. It's important all year round, but especially during the summer months. And we have to make sure we have the right number of people in the Detective Bureau. This is the last one. An administrator at my school, I'm not going to mention the school, was involved in a domestic All right, so basically the question is, what can we do about domestic violence in general and domestic violence murders in particular? So we have each and every precinct in Housing PSA has a domestic violence unit. It's usually a sergeant and 3, 4, or 5 cops. And this is what they do full-time in conjunction with the Detective Bureau. They go through the DV, the domestic violence reports. They go through the complaint reports to see if there are any patterns. And then they go out and make visits, hopefully to prevent violence in the future. There are also domestic violence advocates in each in the precincts also, which is important work. So, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you again, Commissioner. Let's give him another round of applause.